Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking an absolutely epic invisible relay race. It's a technological marvel that happens around us every single day, pulling live events out of thin air and bringing them directly into your living room. So let's jump right in. Picture this. You're watching a thrilling penalty shootout at a massive football match. The crowd is roaring, the player steps up to the ball, and boom, you experience that nail-biting, decisive moment in your own home almost instantly. Have you ever actually pondered the sheer technological magic that teleports that exact split second to you? We're not just talking about a camera pointing at a field. It's a massive, highly coordinated system of studios, broadcast centers, space satellites, and receivers all working together in the blink of an eye. To really wrap our heads around this, we have to establish a foundational concept. The basic idea of television is literally just radio with pictures. Where a radio transmits sound signals through the air, television sends a picture signal right alongside it. These signals are carried by radio waves, invisible patterns of electricity and magnetism racing through the air at the speed of light, which is roughly 186,000 miles per second. Think of it like this. The radio waves are like waves on the sea, and the data is a surfer. The waves themselves aren't the information just surfs on top of them. It's such an ingenious invention, and it's transformed society so much that on average, children spend about 1,500 hours a year watching it compared to just 900 hours sitting in a classroom, which is pretty wild when you consider that one of TV's earliest inventors, Philo T. Farnsworth, famously thought the medium was so hopelessly dumbed down that he literally refused to let his own kids watch it. Okay, moving on to section 1, the magic of the studio. Let's start at the very origin point of this entire journey. Before a signal can travel anywhere, it has to be captured right at the camera lens. White light, which contains all colors, enters the lens. It then hits a beam splitter, often a trichroic prism, which literally shatters that light into the primary colors of red, green, and blue. Microscopic light sensors like CMOS or CCD chips instantly detect these colors and convert them into digital electrical signals. Meanwhile, perfectly synced microphones are capturing the raw stadium sound so it all lines up seamlessly. Section 2. Prepping the broadcast signal. Now, we have a catch. The raw video and audio created in the studio are way too massive to be transmitted directly to millions of viewers. Before this huge amount of data can travel, it has to be carefully prepped and polished at a broadcast center. If you peek under the hood of a basic TV transmitter, you'll see how raw signals need a carrier wave to ride on. The video signal typically goes to an AM, or amplitude modulation transmitter, while the audio signal gets routed to an FM, or frequency modulation transmitter. These signals are amplified, modulated, and beautifully merged together so they can be blasted out from a single, unified antenna. Of course, the way we prep that signal has evolved massively over the years. Older analog signals traveled as continuous, undulating waves. The problem? They were incredibly fragile, easily ruined by a tall building or a passing thunderstorm. Digital television changed the game completely. It converts everything into compressed zeros and ones using advanced codecs like MPG-4 or HEVC. This makes the signal remarkably robust, but it's also so efficient that broadcasters can actually multiplex, meaning they can combine multiple TV channels onto one single frequency. Which brings us to Section 3, transmitting through the air. Once our signal is prepped, compressed, and ready to roll, it's handed off like a baton. The classic way to deliver this is terrestrial broadcasting. We're talking about giant transmitting towers blasting radio waves across entire cities. These signals generally occupy the very high frequency, or VHF band, and the ultra high frequency, or UHF band. Your home antenna catches these waves out of the sky. But because they travel relatively close to the ground, terrestrial signals still have to dodge hills, skyscrapers, and weather to get to you. Section 4, the epic satellite journey. So what happens when a ground-based tower just isn't enough? To reach across an entire continent or to hit isolated rural areas without interference, the signal takes a massive detour into space. A powerful Earth station blasts an uplink signal 22,000 miles straight up to a geostationary satellite. Inside that satellite, devices called transponders go to work. They catch that super weak uplink signal, amplify it back to full strength, shift it to a completely different frequency so it doesn't crash into incoming signals, and finally beam it all the way back down to Earth. This downlink literally rains the broadcast over entire countries simultaneously. Section 5. Catching the invisible waves. Now that this data is raining down on your roof, how does your setup actually grab it? It all starts with the dish, which is essentially acting as a giant parabolic mirror. It reflects those incredibly faint microwaves from space and focuses them precisely onto a small device called the LNB, or Low Noise Block Converter. The LNB is the unsung hero here. It amplifies that faint signal, filters out all the random cosmic background noise, and cleverly converts those high-frequency microwaves down into a lower frequency called the L-band. This lets the data travel safely down the coaxial cable into your living room without bleeding away. That cable plugs straight into your set-top decoder. You can think of the decoder as a highly specialized mini-computer. Its whole job is to tune in to the exact frequency you want, demodulate the digital signal, decrypt it if you're a paying subscriber, and then unzip all that highly compressed 0 and 1 data. Only after all that can your TV actually understand what it's receiving. Now you might be wondering, in the age of high-speed fiber internet and endless streaming apps, why do we still rely on these invisible radio frequency waves? Well, traditional RF tuners remain absolutely crucial. They provide cost-free universal access to news and sports without throttling anyone's internet bandwidth. Plus, and this is a big one, during a natural disaster, cellular networks and internet cables are often the first things to fail. Terrestrial RF broadcasting is incredibly resilient. It's practically the ultimate lifeline for emergency public alerts. Section 6. Painting the TV screen. Our signal has finally finished its relay race from the stadium to space to your decoder. Let's talk about how the screen actually shows it to you. Older broadcasts relied on a fascinating optical illusion called interlacing. You have to think of TV as basically an electronic flickbook, flashing still images so fast your brain fuses them together into motion. To prevent the screen from noticeably flickering at lower frame rates, older TVs would draw all the odd-numbered lines of the picture first, and then, a fraction of a second later, fill in all the even-numbered lines. Your brain just merges these two half pictures together. But there's a catch. If an object on screen is moving really fast, those odd and even lines don't line up perfectly anymore, which creates these jagged, comb-like edges on moving objects. To draw those lines, older CRT televisions used a literal electronic paintbrush. Now, these glass tubes were incredibly heavy. Back in the day, people tried to make TVs portable just like radios. Take the Echo TMB-272 from 1955. It ran on a 12-volt battery, and the BBC loved it as a monitor for outside broadcasts. But despite being called portable, it weighed an absolute ton because of the cathode ray tube inside. It housed an electron gun, firing a beam of negatively charged particles. Electromagnets would physically steer this beam back and forth across the screen at blistering speeds. Whenever the beam struck the colored phosphor dots coated on the inside of the heavy glass, those dots would light up red, green, or blue, painting the image right in front of you. Thankfully, we've left those bulky, heavy tubes behind. Modern flat screens, like LCDs, take that crisp, unzipped digital signal and use it to control millions of microscopic liquid crystals. These crystals act exactly like tiny, twisting shutters, independently turning millions of individual red, green, and blue subpixels on and off to create stunningly sharp images. There are no electromagnets, no heavy glass tubes, no electron guns, just precise digital manipulation of light. We've really journeyed from an era of grainy analog waves and flickering electron guns into a world of compressed digital data beamed from space to illuminate millions of liquid crystals in our homes. It is a stunning, non-stop relay race of physics and engineering. As we continue to leap forward into 4K, 8K, and beyond, you really have to wonder, what seemingly impossible leaps will this broadcasting magic take next? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep wondering, and I'll catch you on the next one.